Today on Locked On Red Wings, Brett Pesce would be a massive upgrade on the Red Wings blue line and could help ease the workload for Moritz Seider.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a former broadcast producer for 97.1 The Ticket, where Scotty's a host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. It's been a minute since it's just been the two of us, you and I, and we've had guests on pretty consistently, so it's nice to just be the boys back together. Just the boys.
Back together. We've been here the whole time, but yeah, it's just us. Yeah,
you understand the sentiment.
Just the two of us.
On today's episode, we're going to do a free agent hypothetical on bringing in pending UFA Brett Pesce. He's a right shot defenseman out of the Carolina Hurricanes. And pretty simply, does he fill a hole that Scotty and I, me especially, feels there is on the right side on the second pair? So before we get to any of that, I got to thank you guys for making Locked On Red Wings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And also got to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Hockey GM. Ever dreamed of being an NHL GM and managing your hockey franchise? Well, you can now with Ultimate Hockey GM. It's completely free, and Locked On listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using promo code LOCKEDONNHL in the game store. To download the game, just visit hockeygm.app or look it up on the App Store's Ultimate Hockey GM. Start your dynasty today. Scotty, we did a couple, actually we did like three, I think, hypotheticals between trade and free agency last week before stopping, and then we did now we've done three draft profiles in a row. But Brett Pesce has been kind of on our radar to talk about for a little while because we view that the second pair needs to upgrade because Moritz Seider should not be. He can handle it, and he proved it this year, but he should not have to deal with the type of deployments and usage that he got this past year. It was so extreme. So when looking at Brett Pesce, Scotty, what are some of the strengths that we as Red Wings fans, and us in particular as hosts of Locked On Red Wings, may look for from this 29-year-old defenseman?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I think for the context of our conversation, the biggest strength for him joining the Wings is fit. I don't think that this is reinventing the wheel, and we'll talk plenty about his style on the ice, right? He's not a big point producer. He's more of a true kind of defensive defenseman. But I think that fit is really the selling point here. This is a guy that is a solid defender, right? Like I said, defensive defenseman, and is a right shot D. And that's a really easy starting point to kind of get a Red Wings fan or the Red Wings front office's ears to kind of perk up. I really... And again, we'll talk about the stylistic fit, and we'll talk about the contract and what he's kind of looking for financially, because that's obviously a big factor in the decision to bring him in if they were to do it. But I really think that the biggest reason why the Wings should want to at least consider this is just the fit he would have on the organization. It's kind of I don't want to throw around perfect fit loosely and just say that every single free agent out there is, but he would slide in really nicely on the as a top four right shot defenseman right behind Seider. Played a lot of penalty kill 2 for a really, really good defensive team for the Canes last season. That there's a lot to like in terms of where he slides into the lineup really seamlessly.
Yeah, I would completely agree, which makes sense because we both agreed to talk about this guy as a candidate for the Red Wings. But you mentioned there about he played a lot of penalty kill. To be precise, he was technically third in time on ice per game at penalty kill, but you take out number one because that player only played 2 games with the Carolina Hurricanes. So really he was second on the Carolina Hurricanes in total 5-on-5 time on the ice per game. So 17 minutes of 5-on-5 ice time per game. That's second on the team. And then at penalty kill, he was second on the Carolina Hurricanes in penalty kill time on ice per game. I know that's a mouthful, but basically the amount per game he spent on the ice for the team's penalty kill. So he's a top penalty killer with the Carolina Hurricanes, which is the best possession team in the league. And he was one of the top. He was second on the team in 5-on-5 time on the ice per game.
Yeah.
So he was borderline a top pair defenseman for them in different situations. So here in Detroit with Moritz Seider, he'd slide right in and become that that third or fourth defenseman. He'd be on the second pair on the right side. And the biggest strength that he has is the fact that he is overall a defensive defenseman first and foremost. Like, it's the second pair. I don't like doing comps because I'm going to sound like an a-hole because their play styles aren't one for one and no one's is. But like, people love Olimata because he's a defensive defenseman, right? But he's only capable of playing third pair minutes in reality. Well, Brett Pesce is that, but can play second pair minutes. He can take on that harder usage. And because of that, that really opens the doorway to help easing the pressure on guys like Moritz Seider and Jake Wallman or Ben Sherratt, who's ever playing on the left side come this next season. And I know that he's not perfect. We'll talk about, his pitfalls as a player, areas that he lacks, because like everyone, unless you're Connor McDavid, there are areas of your game that aren't super great. And we'll talk about that in segment 2, and we'll talk about what he's going to cost to bring him in, which is inevitably a con because free agency is expensive. But when you just look at what he brings, a defensive defenseman capable of playing top 4 minutes, eating lots of time on the penalty kill, the first thing that pops in my head as that biased Red Wings fan that I am is how much easier, kind of like the situation we had with Matt Roy, right? How much easier he's going to make the life of Moritz Seider or whoever he is paired with. We've talked about it ad nauseum, right? Moritz Seider and Jake Wallman and Moritz Seider and Ben Sherratt had the toughest deployments in the league because the other 4 defensemen on the Red Wings roster on any given night could not take the type of deployments that they needed it for. Jeff Petrie, God bless him, he looked overexposed. I think he is, at this point in his career, more of a third-pair defenseman. I think he's a serviceable third-pair defenseman. I think I have other thoughts on some of the other defensemen that are on the third pair currently, but what I'm trying to get at here is you put him on the second pair. Now all of a sudden your second pair next year is Simon Edvinsson and Brett Pesce, and they can take some of the harder workload, not the hardest, but some of the workload that Moritz Seider and whoever he's paired with is working with and take that away, allowing Moritz Seider to then be used in more offensive zone situations because you're not using Brett Pesce in offensive zone situations if you could probably avoid it. He only had 13 points last year in 70 games played. So you're going to give those deployments more to your Moritz Seiders, but also he could be a fantastic mentor for Simon Edvinsson. I mean, this is basically the Matt Roy conversation we are having again. Like Brett Pesce falls into that same category of just a veteran defenseman who's still in his prime, who you'll have through, hopefully, you imagine your competitive run that's going to be able to eat big minutes on the penalty kill and at even strength and make the life of your blossoming number one D-man easier so he can actually use his offensive tools more frequently instead of only being out there in the defensive zone. I think it just makes a lot of sense from that angle.
For sure. And you mentioned it a little bit there, right? Like the pairing. I mean, how night and day different would deployments look if the second pair, for instance, was Pesce and Edvinsson, right? Like how just wildly different would that look than when it was Sherratt Petrie or when, like Olimata and Gostisbehere were obviously third pair in the second half of the season and we're only getting offensive zone deployments. Just it would be completely night and day, and you would have 2 guys who you would hope would be sound, defensive-minded defensemen back there on that second pair, and you would be able to, again, like you alluded to there, kind of utilize Seider, and you'd still put him in defensive zones plenty, but you could try to utilize him a little bit more on the offensive side of the puck. I really think that pair, that is like a really big, again, fit is huge with me for this one. And I think that's a really big selling point is like Pesce and Edvinsson next to each other would be effing awesome.
Yeah, and just, I mean, to kind of show you a little bit more visually, if you're watching on YouTube, and I'll try my best to explain it to people who are listening on Spotify or Apple or the Odyssey app, whatever you're listening on. I'll pull up the Dauber Hockey Frozen Tools. You know how much I love my graphs. I'll change the background. There we go. And you can see here that Brett Pesce, while he is solidly getting offensive zone deployments now, and before I get anywhere else, I want to say that every single Carolina Hurricane defenseman has over 50% offensive zone deployments. And the reason for that is they're the best possession team in the NHL.
Right. They always
so when you see that, I don't want you to be like, oh my God, like, we're going to have to put him in more defensive zone. He might not be good there. But you do also see that he took the hardest competition out of any one of his teammates this last season. He is the highest to the north on the y-axis for quality of competition relative to his teammates. Now, mind you, this is still nowhere near the quality of competition Seider and Wollman faced this year, but it's still harder than what Sherratt, Edvinsson, and Jeff Petrie got in their time with the Detroit Red Wings last year. So you could bring him into Detroit, and yes, you would see his offensive zone deployment go down because the Red Wings just aren't as good. And no matter how many strides the Red Wings take this next year, I highly doubt they'll eclipse the Carolina Hurricanes in possession. But you'll be able to put him in situations like that against the tougher competition, and you'll see Seider and Wollman come back down to more reasonable levels. Like, it just makes so much sense from a quality of competition standpoint with what he brings to the table as a more, analytically speaking, defensive zone defenseman. Now, I haven't seen a lot of my assumptions I'm making based on this episode are based on a lot of numbers. I haven't gotten the opportunity to see him play a whole lot, but just looking at the numbers alone here, there's a lot to love about Brett Pesce. But there's also things that aren't perfect either, and we'll talk about that in segment 2, so stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. Got to talk to you guys today about Ultimate Hockey GM. Red Wings fans, I want to take a moment to bring up one of our partners, and that's the mobile game, Ultimate Hockey GM, as just mentioned. Ever dreamed of becoming an NHL GM and managing your hockey franchise? Do you think you could run the Red Wings better than Steve Yzerman himself? Well, your dream can come true, and this game is most definitely for you. Manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the seasons, and lead your team to glory. Hire the right coaches and staff, trade players or draft picks, navigate through free agency and the draft, all in a challenging and realistic game world. As a Red Wings fan, you know there is no offseason, and GMs are constantly making moves, even if they're behind the scene, at every point of the year to improve their team's chances, and that's why I think you're going to love this game. Ultimate Hockey GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. By the way, Locked On Red Wings fans get a 100% free boost to their franchise when you're using the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in the game store. So make sure to check it out. Download the game. Just visit hockeygm.app or look it up in whatever app store you may be using. Ultimate Hockey GM, start your dynasty today. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty and I are talking about Brett Pesce, and in segment 1, we talked about why he fits so well. Scotty, let's talk a little bit about why he might not fit, or I guess may not fit, but what cons as a player we see him having. That's it. Go ahead.
I thought there was more.
I was trying to think of a way to be smoother, and then my brain just stopped. So go ahead.
Fair enough. Honestly, I think here value is a big conversation. I don't know if you want to jump the gun on that conversation. We can have that later if you want to save that towards the end. But I think that is a big conversation. I mean, he's going to garner a decent contract this year. And there's a huge question surrounding is the amount of money that's kind of projected and being thrown out there for him going to be worth a second pair defenseman that doesn't really produce much offensively. Now, that's, again, I think that's what this team needs really badly in their top 4 on the blue line. So I don't view that as like a huge negative, but I do understand the angle of again, spending however much money on someone who's not going to produce too much on the offensive side of the puck. But even aside from just like the, not producing points, whatever, just in general, again, second pair defenseman, he's going to make a decent amount of money. And is that how you want to allocate your funds? I think that's kind of again, we can save that conversation if you want to save it for the end, but I think that's probably the biggest one in my eyes.
It is. It is the biggest one. I would also say that while you're not signing him to have offense, obviously 13 points, you would hope to produce a little bit more offense out of a second pair defenseman. I think that is a fair criticism to say, while I spun it in segment 1 to talk about how positively that could then help Moritz Seider. You still want a little bit more production. And he has had, the season prior, he had 30 points, which is a lot more acceptable, I think, out of a defensive defenseman playing second pair minutes. So this year, in just 70 games, having 13 points is definitely a dip in his production. And I would hope that he would be able to go back to that 25 to 30 point range that he had consistently the years prior. Another problem that I was noticing when looking over the analytics, and again, I didn't get a huge opportunity to watch a lot of these guys play. So I'm making a lot of assumptions based on numbers. And we know that in reality, there's a balance between the two. Sometimes the numbers don't properly reflect players' on-ice play, and sometimes the on-ice play, it's the vice versa, right? So with Brett Pesce, one thing I noticed as well is that in Corsi for relative, Fenwick relative, and expected goals for percentage relative, which is blocked shot attempts, unblocked shot attempts, and then just expected goals is pretty self-explanatory. He was negative relative to his teammates. He was, I don't have it up exactly right in front of my face here. I can pull it up real quick. But at 5-on-5, he was a negative 1.60 Corsi for percentage relative. He was a negative 2 Fenwick for percentage relative. And at expected goals for percentage, he was negative 3. And I won't go into the details on that too much because I know I'll lose some people. But basically what it is, they were getting shot attempts and projected goals against more so when he was on the ice rather than off. But the thing I'll say against that is, one, again, this is the Carolina Hurricanes are the best possession team in the NHL. And two, he was getting the toughest deployments in terms of quality of competition than any other of his partners on defense. So while he's in the negative there and near the bottom, I take that with a grain of salt when you look at who he had to play against compared to his teammates as well. So, well, that is a con that he was negative and not positive in those situations. You also have to have that context as well of the quality of the competition, which is why I'm not too worried about that as well, because he'll come to Detroit, if he were to come to Detroit, and play, Seider is going to get those toughest minutes. So he'll come here and he'll play against some slightly easier competition than he would have on the Carolina Hurricanes, while at the same time still playing tougher competition than Jeff Petrie did and bringing Seider down as well. So I'm not too worried about those relative analytics. I think that he still makes a lot of sense. Really, the only other thing that I have about him as a con is he's got a little bit of an injury history, and that's not the player's fault, but they always say the best ability is availability, right? And he's had 2 seasons cut short by shoulder injuries, and shoulder injuries can, like any joint injury, can be reoccurring, but also, he played 70 games this year, and I think he played 82 games the year before. I'm not too incredibly worried about that. Like, that's where one of those things we're having in this segment about the cons, and none of these cons really worry me enough to be a deal breaker. None of them outweigh the pros, in my opinion. The biggest thing I'd probably be concerned with is just like getting back to that 25-point production, just to, as a second pair defenseman, that's what I would hope for. But again, it's just, they're so small compared to the benefits that having him on the team would bring.
Yeah, I agree. We can talk contract after the break if you want.
Yeah, sure. Let's go to break. So stay tuned for segment 3, Locked On Red Wings. We'll talk about what it could cost to bring him here. So stay tuned. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. Segment 3, Lockdown Red Wings podcast. Scotty, in terms of what you're seeing in regard to what he may want in free agency in terms of contract, what are you seeing?
A lot of numbers that start with 6. That kind of seems to be the consensus. There's a little bit of variation on the years, but like this guy's 29 or 30. I'd imagine he's going to want, like this contract to take me as close to the end of the road in his NHL career as he possibly can. So you're going to be doing a decently long-term commitment as well as something in the $6 million range. I've seen everything from 6.15 to 6.8 and pretty much everything in between as well. So that seems to be the consensus, is somewhere in that mid 6.5-ish, give or take a quarter or a half a mil on either side there. And then, a lot of, 5, 6, 7 year contracts being thrown out there as well.
Yeah, I was seeing those too. One of them was an article from The Athletic, and the author escapes me, unfortunately. But one thing that they put out there I also saw was he wanted 8 years, 50 to 55 million, which would be 6 to 6.5 million. And it's the same conversation we had with Matt Roy, right? And every UFA, like the Red Wings, if you assume they're going to have to spend 16 to 17 million on Seider and Raymond, we'll have the cap room to make maybe one bigger signing and then fill out the roster with, the cheaper signings that we saw a lot of the last few years, which teams do every single year, not just the Red Wings. Do you want Brett Pesce to be that signing to shore up your defense and make Seider's life easier when you still have question marks in your top 6? You still may have question marks in goaltending. Like, the biggest problem outside of any of that is that where your priority should be, or should your priority be in upping the goal scoring on the top 6, or just reassuring that you have somebody you have a little bit more confidence on between the pipes? And then, of course, same conversation we had with Max, and anytime we talk defenses, you bring another defenseman in, then you got to kick somebody out.
Yeah, and that one, again, like we've talked about that ad nauseum. Like Justin Hall is somebody who is, I think all Red Wings fans are looking for some way to work out a trade or somehow make it so that he is not on the Red Wings come the fall. And like we've talked about this a lot. We've talked about like the potential for maybe like Olimata or like Jeff Petrie and like et cetera, et cetera. So like there's room. If they really wanted to, they could do it. But I don't know. I find it hard to believe that if they do trade Hall, that they're just going to be able to trade the entire contract and not have to retain at least some of it. So that's going to be more money that you're not just. Are you okay?
It just splashed right in my face. I got splashback.
That was
all
a really
over my
wild face to make right then.
Yeah, well, it got me in the eye.
Oh, well, maybe you shouldn't have been talking.
I wasn't talking. You were talking.
So, yeah, I think that's like a salary that you're going to have to. It's not an added expense, but it's one that's not just going to go away, even if the player does, at least entirely. So that's something that you're going to have to navigate around as well. But I really do think that that's the biggest question mark with this. The fit on the ice is dang near perfect. It's just a matter of, do you want to put all of the financial resources, again, as you said, prematurely subtracting money and setting money aside for Seider and Raymond? Do you want to put all the money you have left in one top 4 defenseman, or do you want to spread it around a little bit more? Or, again, put it in maybe a different player. That's the biggest question with bringing him in. But I don't know. From a value perspective, he's going to be worth what he gets paid. He's absolutely worth 6.5 mil.
Yeah. And again, one of the big things Yzerman keeps talking about is getting the team better defensively, and he does that. He doesn't bring a lot to the table offensively, although, like, if he goes back to that 25 to 30-point form, that's not bad. But, like, you're going to put him on the penalty kill. He'll be a top 4 penalty killer for you, so he's going to be on PK unit 1 or 2. He's going to play top 4 minutes. He's going to be responsible, so he'll make Sider's life easier. It's just like you said, it's cost-benefit analysis. It's just, is what you're going to have to give up to bring him, money-wise, going to be worth it and make your team better enough to make the playoffs? Because that's really the end of that's the goal this year, right? Like, they sniffed it this year and fell a little bit short, like literally on a tiebreaker. So does Brett Pesce help tip the scales? In one facet he does, but it's just not to rehash everything you just said, but yeah. And that's going to be, thank God that's Steve Yzerman's decision to make. And you know what else too, and this is something off topic, but you mentioned Hull, and Max Boltman brought it up yesterday too, is you and I are so in sync that we think that, like, you've got to move on from Hull, right? But if there are no takers, and again, the Sharks just took Barclay Goodrow off of the hands of the Rangers for free, so I mean, I think there will be takers out there for him if you really need him to, but it's going to be hard to move him. There is a reality they might run it back with Justin Hull and not get anyone for the blue line, which I wouldn't be a fan of, just because of, and again, how I feel they utilized Sider. But I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting, and July 1st is right around the corner, and there's a lot of guys that I would be excited to see them bring in, but there's a lot of questions that need to be answered first, primarily those 2 big ones that we keep asking about, and we still haven't gotten those contracts.
Would love to know the terms on those. Yeah, we got a week and a half about until July 1st, and 7 days, 8 days until the draft.
I almost wonder too, because Max also said yesterday that the buyout window starts the day after the Cup final ends, and I wonder if Yzerman is maybe waiting for the Cup to end, because he would still know. Like, they would crunch numbers like, what if we buy out this player?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I'm just so impatient, and I'm hungry for news. So anything, please.
But also, how do you feel about the Stanley Cup?
I'm ready for it to end.
Really? I want it to go 7.
I think the problem is, normally I'd be with you where like more hockey as long as possible, but the way they did the schedule is like more annoying to me than anything. Like the 5-6 days between the conference finals and the Stanley Cup final was obnoxious.
Yeah.
And now, because of the distance, and I'm sure partly because of scheduling, they want to drag it out as long as possible. It's like 2-3 days between each game. And like, it's hard to keep momentum and stay excited about something when you have to wait so long between games. And it's just, they're dragging it out so the teams only have 5 days between the end, because it's going to end on the Game 7 is on the 24th. Like, that's when it's going to happen, if it happens. Then you have the draft on the 28th. There's going to be 3 days between the 24th and the 28th for teams to like do stuff before they had to get to Las Vegas and get ready for the draft. So like, it's just annoying. Like, I love the Stanley Cup final. I'm enjoying watching it. I just wish it was happening a little bit more urgency.
Yeah.
Games on shorter schedules.
For sure. I want Florida to blow a 3-0 lead at this point.
I don't disagree with you. We did that conversation, right? Like, who we want to win, and both of us want Edmonton to win. Well, more so we want Florida to lose than Edmonton to win. Yeah. But I'll find a silver lining with either team losing. So
yeah, same.
I'll be okay.
Yeah.
I'll be okay.
there will be pros to either team losing and cons to either team losing. So
right. All right, Scotty. Happy Friday. Sending this off to the weekend.
We ball.
We'll be back with a new episode on Monday. Same time, same place. So your team every day.
Every day.